Today's video is sponsored by boot.dev. Use code WOULDNT to get 25% off your subscription. Many terrifying events and entities have crept from the bellowing, coke-addled mind of Stephen King, from extraterrestrial clowns that feed off fear to zombie children buried in Indian burial grounds. But one occurrence sticks with me more than the rest. One of existential horror that you could both see and not see bellowed in what would be King's 1980 novella turned 2007 Frank Darabont film with a ton of the original Walking Dead cast, The Mist. Enveloping and unleashing creatures from realms beyond our understanding, this bog would become the inspiration for many horrific elements in gaming, inspiring the very fog and monsters of the Silent Hill series, while the concept of monsters pouring into our universe through dimensional portals being cited by Valve devs as inspiration for Half-Life's story. While the Mist's legacy stands strong, it also has flubbed pretty hard in the past. Here's looking at you, 2017 TV series that was cancelled after a season. But what if we took the isolated incident of the Mist and potentially expanded its influence far and wide beyond the scope of a little town in Maine? Implications usually were that the creature cloud had spread far and wide, possibly even globally. For the most part though, characters ended up either dying, staying in safety, or seeing glimpses of hope for humanity as the story ended, or famously offing everyone you love 1 minute before armed forces show up for probably the darkest ending in cinematic history. Let's delve into that idea, shall we? Not the offing loved ones off thing, but the global Mist idea. What would happen if the Mist and its inhabitants were unleashed on our world today? Today, we are telling you why you wouldn't survive the Mist. If there is one thing you will not have wanted to miss out on, it's to learn how to code. Working from home is becoming more and more prevalent, with maybe even a certain Mist coming up. So learning back-end web development at boot.dev is a good way to start working towards a career as a back-end developer earning up to $100,000 a year in salary. You can do so with boot.dev and not be bored to tears, as the program offers XP, levels, achievements, and quests to get on the global leaderboards. You're basically learning a valuable skill while taking on challenges like it's an RPG. You'll also have the support of the boot.dev Discord community if you ever get stuck on coding challenges. It's designed to get you writing code like there's no tomorrow, and if you're a fan of Why You Wouldn't Survive, that might be coming soon. Click the link in the description box and use my code WOWSuchGaming to get 25% off your first payment for boot.dev. That is 25% off your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription you choose. Become a master coder and do it the fun way with boot.dev. Decades ago, a secret government organization known as the Department of Scientific Intelligence, otherwise known as the SHOP, had conducted experiments of wide varieties while covering up otherworldly events, all out of the public's eye, ranging from creating chemical drugs that can drastically alter a person's chromosomes in the hopes of creating psychokinetic powers, but instead causing test subjects to go mad and kill themselves or be executed, or excursions leading to wiping out the residents of Haven, Maine, who had been infected and mutated by an alien spacecraft, all while procuring pieces of the technology for themselves to test on. However, of these incidents, one was so wrapped in mystery that the SHOP's involvement is still speculated to this day. Originating in Shaymore, Maine, a secret military experiment had been underway. Dubbed the Arrowhead Project, these operations would see to containing a portal to another dimension full of hostile, near Lovecraftian creatures. The creation of this portal may have been intentional or maybe not. It may have been incidental like like the portals to Hell on Deimos in Doom, or forced by experimentation like those made by 11 and 1 in Stranger Things. Regardless, the portal existed, and it was kept within a tank surrounded by military forces. That was until the strongest electrical storm in Maine's recorded history blew through the area, rupturing and destroying much of the department's electronics and equipment. The portal had no longer been held under intensive restriction and was subsequently ripped open. This door spewed out an otherworldly mist with an untold amount of hostile beasts by the hundreds or even thousands of all shapes and sizes running rampant. While the mist itself is not deadly to physically be in, nor does inhaling it cause any kind of abnormal effects, it's what dwells within the thick atmosphere that leads to today's why you wouldn't survive synopsis. The mist itself can be seen as a physical representation of the alternate dimension leaking into our own, veritably merging both realities. It's possible that the temperatures, air composition, the awful smell, warped acoustic sounds, dampening of natural light, and overall small field of vision may be the direct causes as to why the extra-dimensional creatures choose to stay within the mist's parameters. Once the mist has seeped its way across the landscape, it will only be a matter of time until it surrounds you, not knowing what dangers could be lurking only mere feet away from you, and ultimately what could swiftly end you in the shrouds of the bog. But what lies in this mist? All of these alien animals naturally evolved within this environment. They all adapted to hunting voraciously in a little to no vision landscape. Most, if not all of these unnatural predatory creatures hunt via smell and are insatiable for their hunt for food. They are immediately violent and hostile to everything that isn't of their own species and will outright slaughter, consume, and even use the flesh of their victims as breeding grounds. Almost all of them are also giant, hybridized forms of known insects, arachnids, and other predaceous specimens, infesting wherever they see fit and consuming whatever they can, as long as they can detect the scent of their prey. Think like the insects on Skull Island in the 2005 adaptation of King Kong, swarming their prey in a matter of seconds in a mass once their odor has been picked up, joined by horrors of Lovecraftian nature with ensnaring tentacles, towering stature, and raptorial legs. Now, what are we going to be facing within the mist? Well, the first of these carnivorous critters to spell doom for you, and probably the most horrific of all of them in their murderous methods, is the Grey Widower. Looking like giant spiders with claws on its appendages, quills on its abdomen, and razor-sharp teeth all along its mouth adorned on its skull, these giant faux arachnids are extremely fast and are constantly looking for places and prey to convert into nests and breeding grounds. When spotting prey, it will shoot highly corrosive webbing from its stomach at bullet-like speeds. The webs will wrap around and bind people as their clothing and flesh are melted away. The Grey Widower uses the corrosive bindings to destroy muscles and debilitate foes, even shooting the caustic fiber into the mouths of its victims so they can suffocate and melt away their eyesight at the same time. The Widowers will, however, not outright kill their prey yet, just leaving them barely alive in miserable, painful agony. Once a casualty has been fully incapacitated, the adult will proceed to inject the victim's body with thousands of eggs. The victim's body will start to grow pulsating and bulging boils that will permeate all across the torso, each boil housing tons of these eggs within. The widower will then move the body to out-of-the-way areas and cocoon it in its acidic webbing to protect the eggs within. Over the course of merely one day will the multitudes of widowette eggs gestate and hatch. Upon hatching, will the still living host body feel these thousands of insects begin to eat through their own innards, devouring flesh and blood on their way out and proceeding to explode from the corpse like a balloon. The gray widowette swarm will then seek out any viable prey nearby in order to eat more and more. As they mature in short amounts of time, reaching maturity in just a few days, the horde of the gray widowers will create giant hives. Enveloping areas in this webbing, environments will become silky caverns that soon birth millions of these demonic spiderlings, all working together to surprise attack unwary survivors. All it takes is one unlucky glob of webbing hitting you just about anywhere on your body, and the widow swarm will quickly see to injecting you full of their offspring to burst out of your chest or your back and deliver probably one of the most agonizing deaths a person can imagine. And if there is just one living organism nearby and they inject their babies inside of them, there will be thousands more, indefinitely reproducing. In line with deadly insects given drastic proportions, the scorpion flies can be seen buzzing around, slamming into surfaces, and swarming towards sources of light, looking like enlarged mosquitoes without the signature needle-like proboscis, instead adorning a scorpion-like tail and meshed flesh. Their numbers and tendency to group together as creatures the size of household pets can mean they can overwhelm people quickly. They can also naturally produce a highly virile neurotoxin administered through their stinger that can cause intensive swelling around the puncture site and cause a victim of theirs to suffocate to death in the span of only a few minutes. The scorpion flies, despite having such a deadly toxin at their disposal, only one sting is needed to kill you in a short amount of time, are only the hors d'oeuvre in the two creatures that can precede them once these giant bugs begin to appear. They are the bottom of the food chain. They are consistently hunted and eaten by creatures known as Pterobuzzards. Looking like a mixture of bats and pterodactyls with 4 wings and an even deadlier beak and sharpened talons, they are nocturnal hunters. Attacking anything that draws near them, its constant preying upon scorpion flies means they will most likely be associated in any attacks that come upon human outposts. If there are scorpion flies about, these guys are going to be right behind, especially since humans tend to want to keep well-lit areas, and the scorpion flies are attracted to light. These winged beasts have high speed, size, and beak strength that allows them to easily rip out the flesh of a victim with ease. Considering the requirements for how these can prove to be deadly, the Pterobuzzard is probably the least of your concerns for your own survival. However, the tenacity at attacking scorpion flies could have them recklessly tackling and slashing at surfaces they cling to, possibly breaking through your makeshift barricades and letting the mist roll in your safe haven. Scorpion flies have another creature that can be an indicator for when they are plentiful in number. Extremely large beasts known as Behemoths will walk the earth, being described as being so massive that they would make blue whales look like they were merely trout by comparison. Standing just over 240 feet tall, they lumber forth as if they were Cthulhu's steed. Its sheer size and weight cause its mere migration to leave gigantic footprints in hardened concrete. The beast would easily be able to plow through just about any building unscathed while squashing any people in its way. Much like Borderlands' Rack Hive, it dredges around with many smaller creatures flying around it, possibly as a symbiotic relationship. Kind of like how Egyptian plovers clean the teeth of crocodiles. They serve a purpose for each other in existence. But why would the scorpion flies swarm this beast if not being parasites on its gigantic flesh? Besides its giant size, a discerning feature of it are the tentacles wriggling around its face and stinger-tipped tentacles under its torso. The behemoth is never shown to be hostile to people, and the wiki even states it is a non-violent monster. The sheer size, though, could do more damage than anything on Earth, even if docile, and if provoked, could cause immense amounts of even more damage, especially with the horde of neurotoxin-filled insects always swarming it. Now, it is very possible the beast is the culprit behind the very tentacles tentacles that were seen attacking the supermarket survivors in the loading area of the back of the store. Humorously named the Tentacles from Planet X, these appendages lie low and wait for prey to draw near them, acting inanimate. Ensnaring victims, they will attempt to drag them away to devour them piece by piece. If their prey is able to hold on and be unable to be pulled by the tentacles will use razor-sharp teeth and thorns riddled throughout its frame to tear out large chunks of flesh to weaken them. It does not need to pull its prey all the way in order to consume parts of their body. Even one tentacle has the capability of ripping a person apart instantly, and when drug away, they instantly shred the victim to pieces. Whether or not these tentacles are indeed a part of the behemoth as it possibly rested or was hibernating near the building and the tentacles were just eating to give the creature sustenance, or maybe it's just a completely different entity altogether. Regardless, we are going to be seeing tentacles spouting through open entryways, pipes, and vents that can easily yank you away while cleaving your meat in the process, their true form being hidden amongst the mist. Other creatures we haven't seen the entire appearance of are the Arachni-Lobsters. Its silhouette and described appearance being that of a lobster-red scorpion body with lobster claws, a xenomorph head, and walking around on 6 arthropod-like legs. It stands roughly 2 stories or 20 feet tall and is probably the most ruthless of the mist's denizens. Upon spotting a target, it will instantly grab them and use its razor-sharp claws to bisect victims in a matter of seconds, being able to cut them in half with no struggle whatsoever. It will usually eat the top part of a person's torso while discarding their legs in a bloody mess, possibly preferring the meat of a human's upper part and leaving the remains for other creatures to scrap over like hyenas or vultures. It's possible this beast also has heavily armored chitinous armor, much like the lobsters it's based on, leaving it heavily resistant to damage. These beasts could easily slice through hordes of opposition like it's nothing, the only thing it leaves behind being the discarded half bodies of the victims it eats. And last of the beasts depicted, and while not in the movie or books, but something I wanted to mention from the TV series since the show isn't getting any attention, would be something I aptly titled myself the Plague Wings, being tiny winged insects that seek out organisms and immediately invade their cranial cavity through any orifice. Upon entering the body, will the plague wing mutate the body to create angel-like wings. In a matter of seconds, the insides of the person will be liquefied, as the plague wing will reproduce at an astonishing rate, eventually spawning a swarm of newly born insects out of the victim's mouth to emerge and spread out further. Now, these are the only beasts we know of, however. Considering the mist is the byproduct of an entire dimension leaking into our realm, it's possible the creatures we see are just a mere fraction of a percentage of the deadly denizens that are now walking on Earth. All beasts being violent, carnivorous, and destructive. With all these beasts wandering about, survivability would already be a difficult affair. This isn't even counting how much a deadly mist outside forcing everyone indoors 24/7 would wane on your mental health. The psychological effects displayed in the 2007 film are pretty spot on for how the general public would act even after just a few days around complete strangers in the unknown future the world now sits in front of. Hell, people went mad in 2020 with COVID restrictions. Imagine how they would be in this scenario if it became real. Imagine how it would be with the physical threat of monsters lingering outside everywhere that you can't even see, potentially breaking through windows, glass panes, barricades, and more. Many people would not be able to face this kind of fate. Some would throw others into the mist as sacrifice or bait, some believing it to be a religious comeuppance for humanity. Some people killing each other because they just can't stand each other. It would cause a lot of turmoil and the whole generic we are the true monsters and how we interact with one another. Staying inside wherever the mist forces you to remain will also factor heavily into your long-term psyche, survival, and who you will be with. As soon as the mist lands, you will definitely definitely be unable to leave, since going into the mist is basically a death sentence no matter how you are trying to travel between safe havens. It boils down to how you will survive with those around you as the monsters are animalistically trying to claw their way in. As director Frank Darabont puts it, the story is less about the monsters outside than about the monsters inside. The people you're stuck with, your friends and neighbors breaking under the strain. Are you going to be stuck at work? You better hope your job has ample food and coworkers that weren't secretly plotting to kill you. Are you stuck at home? Better hope you have decent provision and defenses and that family isn't plotting to kill you as well or do anything to you. It all depends on where you are. You can fight back where you're from, I'm sure. Anybody can fight back, right? These creatures have mostly all been shown to be killed by firearms, fire, and blunt objects. So where does the so-called why you wouldn't survive take so much of its meat and potatoes from in today's scenario? Well, the mist will be unable to be stopped with its domain expansion across all of our world. All of Earth, possibly even the known universe, will eventually be wrapped in the billowing silk of this nightmarish mist. Crops and other sources of food that require sunlight would eventually also die over time and wither, as sunlight would basically be blanketed out. Only scraps of the sun would be able to pierce through this billowing fog. Becoming akin to a new ice age, much life on Earth would perish as the food chains would abruptly be cut off. No light, no sun. The fog, even if blown away at points, will constantly reemerge and drastically change the climate of the planet, leading to drastic environmental events, possibly ones that led to the evolutionary chains that forced the animals we see emerging from the mist to be created in the first place. Since the mist's creatures were all basically carnivores, it's safe to assume the environment of their original universe did not yield much, if not any, plant life at all. The creatures of the mist, most specifically the Grey Widowers, would reproduce indefinitely in short amounts of time on scale with the growing death toll of any living thing they could get a hold of. Remember, it isn't just humans that would be prey for these wild things. Any living organisms could be food and or a viable host for their eggs. The mist covering up any and all threats as they approach you, only sometimes seeing a silhouette of their ghastly forms before they swiftly devour you, eviscerate you, dismember you, or inject you with a hellish amount of eggs or a hellish disease that kills you in seconds flat. Anything can burst from the clouds and destroy what protects you. The very planet could be reshaped in the climate that they need to survive. The numbers of the monsters might be thinned at first as the military fights back, but the sheer size of some of these creatures parallel to the indefinite numbers of the smaller infantry would leave most, if not all of humanity worn down and wiped out. We would put up a fight, and with the ending of the novella and the 2007 film, it seems like humanity just might pull through. But with this alternate universe of death and carnage supposedly melding with ours completely, infinitely producing more beasts within the mist, it's safe to say it is no mystery that you would not survive. That covers up this chilling tale of the mist and its ramifications. What do you think? Is there simply not enough going on in the King's Mist to quell your chances of survival? Is just a bit of fire all it takes to change your mind? Let me know down below. As always, big shout out to my editor Chago, aka Quick Flicks, for editing today's video. Check him out for recaps and more. Thank you for watching, and another thanks to my donators over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who chipped in to keep the channel afloat. And if you donate today, your name could be featured on this fancy list here, while also being able to see future videos up to a week early on my Patreon. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay away from the mist, and stay wow.